wherever you may be. Welcome to Bezerra Spiritual Healing Center Sunday service. We are a non-denominational spiritist center and respect all religions and spiritual traditions. So you're welcome to bring your thoughts and questions. Before we start with our announcements, we always begin our service with a prayer, and today our sister Sunshine has volunteered to have our opening prayer. Would everyone please mute your microphone?
Thank you, dear Teresa. Let us close our eyes and let us take a few deep inhales and exhales, bringing our thoughts to this meeting, connecting with God, releasing all earthly considerations for a moment, and just opening our hearts to each other's, to our speaker, to the mentors of this group and each individual mentor. And let us connect and say hello to Jesus, our guide and model. Let us also welcome Mother Mary, Dr. Becerra, Sister Shayla, Dr. Paulo, and all the beautiful benefactor spirits that have been overlooking our meetings, our gatherings, both in person as well as online. Thank you, God, for giving us this opportunity this morning to meet in your name with your love and support. We pray that during the meeting we will stay focused and open-hearted and open-minded so as to glean new insights into how we can turn our lives even more so towards God, aligning our will with God's will, and always boosting the two wings that help us ascend and connect and be one with God. And that is the wing of knowledge, wisdom, studying, expanding our mental horizon, and the wing of love and service. We recall Allan Kardec reminding us that there is no salvation without charity. And with this and so much gratitude and humility in our hearts, we humbly ask for permission to begin today's meeting. And so be it, and so it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Sunshine.
Welcome.
So Bezerra Spiritual Healing Center is a member of the United States Spiritist Federation, and so our spiritual beliefs are based around scientific, philosophical, and religious principles comprised of Spiritism. And then, as we just heard in the prayer, there are two wings that we fly by, hence the meeting is broken up into two parts. First, we have a presenter, which today will be Mark Carlos, helping us to gain wisdom, knowledge. And then the second part is the virtual healing paths. And we want to remind you that your mentor will be working with you and benefactors for you to receive the healing energy. You may also want to consider taking notes during the presentation or jotting down any questions you may have, because we will have a short Q&A after the presentation. So I will share the centaurs. At least I thought I was going to share.
Do you want me to share?
Yeah, can you? I pulled it up, but now I don't see it here.
Just a second.
If you don't mind.
Mm-hmm.
So we have classes throughout the week, and every day at 6 p.m. Pacific time, there is a prayer service, and everyone is welcome to join. And you simply just come into this Zoom that you're in now, and you can join that service, that prayer service. It's short, 10, 15 minutes, depends on how many people show up. So you can see that listed daily prayer, 6 p.m. Pacific time, right there up in pink, highlighted in pink. And then there is some type of presentation, learning situation, book study available almost daily, Monday through Thursday. Again, these are all Pacific times, 6:30. And we have on Mondays, which is the internal healing service with the BSH mediumship group, which if you would like someone to be prayed for, you can list their name in the chat and we will bring it to that meeting. You would be good if you can list if the prayers are for spiritual or physical reasons. Tuesday, we have this book with Divine Light, Initiation into Spiritism. This is by Teresina Oliveira, and I encourage everyone to attend. It has started, but each chapter is a new topic, so it's not like you have to read it from front to cover. You can drop in on any of the chapters. Wednesday, we're going to have a new study starting this week, Heaven and Hell, the Heaven and Hell book by Allan Kardec. And can someone say what time that will be starting? Will that too start at 6:30 Pacific time?
6:30, yes.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let's all be there for that. And I think that's going to be led by Robbie and Mark. Yes, okay, very good. And then Thursday, there is the Living Spring, and the second Thursday of each month, that is an in-person gathering. All right, otherwise it's Living Spring at 6:30 as well, and it's a book study. Sunday, which is tonight, we have a book study that just recently started on No Solar, and it's the first book in the Andre Louis series, and everyone is invited to join that as well. So basically, it's a read and kind of discuss the material that is being read. And then here we are today, Sunday, 10 a.m. for our service and spiritual education and healing passes. So if anyone has any questions about that, you may ask. Otherwise, I will go ahead and introduce our speaker today, which is Mark Carlos. So Mark Carlos is American born and bred, having lived his entire life in California, except more recently, he is now living in Florida. And he did live 1 year in Hawaii. He was raised Catholic. Mark left the church at 16 and was dormant spiritually for almost 30 years. When he became a father, he discovered a power greater than himself, and life has not been the same since. Mark found Spiritism in 2018 and has learned enough to realize he is exactly where he is meant to be. A lifetime musician and technologist, Mark is now retired, focused on his spiritual development, and still learning how to fly with both wings, knowledge and charity. Thank you, Mark. And so Mark will be presenting that to us today on the Spirits book, chapter 2, questions 132 to 146. Take it away, Mark.
You're on mute, friend. No,
Still on mute.
can't hear you.
That was crazy. I got put into full view. Okay, let's try this again. I suppose you can hear me now, right? Okay.
Yes, we can.
For those of you who study Spiritism, I'm going to try to make sure this is not a rehash of what you already know. I'm going to throw some new perspective into this, but I am going to be authentic to how Allan Kardec answered these questions through mediumship with the spirits. And so the topic of these questions, it gets to the purpose of incarnations. Now, notice it's not reincarnation, it's the purpose of incarnation, meaning, if you want to think about it in the present time, the purpose of this life that we are all living right now. Why? Okay. What is the purpose of this life we are living? Okay, come on. There we go. All right. So we're going to go through an initial set of definitions in order to understand what Kardec is driving at with the answers to these questions and the sequence of the questions, because they're very much building block elements to the end. But there's some really interesting things I was able to do with the beginning. So the purpose of the incarnation of spirits. God imposes the incarnation for the purpose of leading us towards perfection. For some, it's an expiation or a correction from prior lives. For others, it's a mission in order to progress further. But in this process of progression, in order to reach the ultimate element, the ultimate peak known as perfection, each spirit goes through the same vicissitudes, the same challenges, the same kinds of experiences as they start from a low level and progress over time. There's a further objective, which is to put us in situations where others can benefit from what we do. So just think about what that might mean. If you're a parent, you have an opportunity to share in the work of creation, your children, and to lead them on a path that is better than the path you were on, because you're improving your path daily, hourly. So the world clothes themselves with an instrument that is in harmony with the matter that exists all around us. And that allows this instrument to be in harmony and carry out the orders of God. Now, you might be wondering, what is this really getting to? Keep reading. In this way, we all contribute to the general work in progress at the same time. So this kind of activity, allowing us to make the world better, is necessary for the evolution of Earth, of the universe. And out of divine wisdom, God has willed that this same activity means that as we progress, we are drawing nearer to God. We are becoming more God-like. Now, this is the law of divine providence, where everything is connected and everything in nature is solid. And just look at the 12 of us that are on this call, or however many are now, because I'm not seeing anybody. We are all united for the same reason at this moment. And it's an example of what God has in mind. Now, I want to give you another perspective on this answer. And you're going to see this throughout, and these additional perspectives are either mine or they're Allan Kardec's. So let's talk about time. Just try to comprehend the reality of time which has already passed. Okay, so the beginning of time, what scientists call how old is the Earth? About 4.5 billion years. Okay, billion years. The first human appeared somewhere between 1.5 and 2.5 billion years ago. Billion years ago. So, first question, how many human incarnations have there been during 1.5 to 2.5 billions of years? Billions of years. Some astronomical quantity of spirits being incarnated into human form. Some phenomenal volume, who are all going through the same progressive process. And as time went on, let's put in some pretty interesting points along the way. The pyramids are now aged to be about 10,000 BC. In fact, that entire valley continues to be explored because it gets older with every new discovery, either within an existing pyramid or because they discover a brand new one that's been buried under the sand. 9,000 years later is the story of Moses before Christ. 1,400 years later, Jesus is born. Look at how small this time interval is compared to 1.5 to 2.5 billion years. And remember, this is not drawn to scale. This is for you to imagine. Oh my gosh, how many spirits have been incarnated, reincarnated before Jesus? And since Jesus, 2,000 plus years. I wrote this 2 years ago. So here's this image of infinity. And the nice thing about the concept of infinity is it has no limits. So just envision this age of Earth and this massive quantity of incarnations continuing, continuing, continuing. Okay? Over time. Just, you can't even put your arms around what that really means in terms of a number. Is incarnation necessary for spirits who have followed the path of the good from the very beginning? Well, first of all spirits at the very beginning are simple and ignorant. They could not possibly have followed from the very first step the path of the good. They gain instructions like we do through the struggles and tribulations of living. God is very just. God would not make some spirits art at an earlier process, at an earlier step in the progress. No, we all start at the same point. So just ask yourself, at whatever point I started, you've been progressing ever since. Whatever year that was, however many incarnations, to get to now. What's the benefit if there are spirits to follow the path of the good, if this does not exempt them from the hardships of corporeal life? They reach the goal more quickly. The faster you start following the path of good, the faster you're going to progress. Some of us know this. I can tell you, I'm realizing it now, 5 years into my spiritist journey. I'm progressing it in some ways faster than I have in the prior years. For those who've been doing this their whole life, you have a different perspective, but a similar concept. Hardships of life, they're often consequences of our imperfections. Wherever we are in that progressive moment, we still are not perfect. We become more purified. We suffer less over time. And the spirits who are not envious, jealous, greedy, or ambitious don't have to endure the torments normally associated with those types of things. And I look at those 4 words personally, and I realize there's a reason for me to be giving this presentation and focus on those 4 words. Because prior to Spiritism, okay, I get it. Okay, so in this principle of progress, we have a trial and error reality which facilitates our learning. In other words, we like to learn the hard way as humans. We don't take always the easiest path. So just create an image in your mind, if you will. You can close your eyes and listen to my words if you like. Think about a blind person who's walking down a long hallway. The blind person, that's a very dark hallway. He's walking down this hallway looking for the correct door. He makes mistakes along the way. Sometimes he thinks he's at a doorway and he runs into the wall. Sometimes he finds a locked door until he finds the correct door and he opens. And the blind person enters into, through the doorway. And all of a sudden, he is seeing a visible light. She. This is how we have learned through all of our incarnations. We begin in the darkness and we come out with light. We begin with nothing and we come out with something better. And every incarnation follows that kind of pattern. So think about your lifetime and think about where you were 10, 20, 30 years ago and compare that to where you are today. And, hasn't your progress been one of trial and error? Haven't you felt blind at times and eventually you learn to see? You finally get it. You finally realize things you weren't realizing when they were happening. And as a result, when that realization happens, when that light bulb goes on, don't you adjust your path from that point forward to not make the same mistakes again and move towards the good. And that is the principle of God's plan. So now we're going to get into some definitions. And here is this word soul, which is a wonderfully misunderstood term, or not necessarily misunderstood, but misused term. And we're going to try to define it. Kardec is going to try to define it for we spiritists so that we can help educate others of exactly what is the soul. Because if you Google the soul, you're going to see some pretty amazing different interpretations of what is the soul. The spirits communicated a very simple answer. The soul is an incarnate spirit. Now remember, this chapter is about the incarnations. So our spirit contains a soul. Or maybe the spirit and the word soul are interchangeable. So again, here comes some semantics. Here comes some confusion. Here comes some different interpretations. So the spirits in Kardec continue to define. What was the soul before its union with a body? And here's the graphic that you might think of as something pertinent. It was a spirit. Okay, wait a minute. What is the soul again? An incarnate spirit. What was the soul before a body? A spirit. Okay. Are souls and spirits therefore one and the same thing? Yes. Souls are no more than spirits. Before uniting with a body, the soul is one of the intelligent beings who populate the invisible world. And when it incarnates, reincarnates, it assumes a physical envelope, quote, the body, in order to facilitate purifying and enlightening itself. Okay, so there's a lot more going on with this. They're one and the same. Let's keep going. So here are some semantics. And the word semantics requires a little bit of understanding. This is the study or science of meaning in a language. And it's the competence of a speaker, like in this moment as I'm talking, with regard to the interpretation of the meaning of linguistic structures, a phrase, a specific word. I have to use it in its proper context in order to convey the appropriate meaning. And there's a third definition, and I don't have to worry about that, but here's semantics. One human thinks one thing about a word, and another human has a completely or even slightly different opinion as to what that word means. And so our wonderful English language has lots of words that have multiple meanings, depending on how it is used within a sentence or a concept. And if you don't have the written version of these words with multiple meanings, and all you do is hear my voice, then again, it's up to me to have competence in order to use this word properly. So think of the word there. Is it T-H-E-R-E? Is it T-H-E-I-R? Is it T-H-E-Y apostrophe R-E? I have to use that in the proper context. Well, there are a lot of words that can also be both nouns and verbs. You know what this means? It makes it really challenging to translate and be effective and accurate. And we know this because Portuguese original material that gets translated into English oftentimes has wording that we struggle with. What are they really getting at? This is, taking a Portuguese word or a Portuguese phrase and doing a literal translation. And in the English version of that, that doesn't quite send the same message every time. Do human beings possess something else besides a soul and a body? And the answer is, of course. there is an intermediary link that unites the soul and the body. And for those of you who know Spiritism, you know what that is. And the nature of this link, it says semi-material, halfway between the nature of the spirit, totally ethereal, and that of the body, totally material. These two natures need each other in order to communicate. It is through this link that the spirit acts upon matter and vice versa. Humans, therefore, consist of three essential parts: the body, or the material being; the soul, or incarnate spirit, which inhabits the body; and the perispirit, or this intermediate link, this principle, this semi-material substance that serves as the primary envelope for the spirit, and it unites the soul with the body. So like a fruit, it consists of the seed, the flesh, the rind. Think of an orange or a lemon. So this is what it might look like graphically, one of the images that made sense of all that I looked at online. Three different components. So I even got a little crazy, and I thought, you know what? I've done a lot of skin diving in my life, thank you, God. And I know that between the ocean's salt water and the human skin, I wear a wetsuit, and it envelops my body so that I can experience the ocean's spirit and comfort. Wow, almost like a perispirit. And then, we have certain jobs in today's current environment that require special suits, like hazmat material. It's enveloping the body, allowing for movement and activity in a safe manner. Okay, so this is this concept of the envelope and how things interconnect. So the question then is the soul independent of the vital principle? And I'm not going to define the vital principle. We've already done that in prior questions and presentations. But in relationship to the question of independence of the soul, the body itself is no more than an envelope. And this is a fundamental principle stated many times. The body does not contain by itself spiritual elements. We're going to talk about it. Can the body exist without the soul? Yes. But when the body dies, the soul abandons the body. Prior to birth, there's no union. There's no union between the soul and the body. But during birth, or during the development of the fetus, its union is established amazingly fast upon conception. We've had presentations recently this year on this very topic. But the point here is the difference between the soul and the body before birth, during life, and after death. Only the death of the body can cut the bonds between the two, enabling the soul to leave. Organic life may animate a body that has no soul, but the soul cannot inhabit a body that has no organic life. If the body dies, the soul is gone. What would our body be if it didn't have a soul? A mass of flesh without intelligence. You could call it a number of different things. You could give it all kinds of categorization. Can't call it human. Because incarnate or living human beings have a soul. True or false? You are a spirit, you have a soul, and you live in a body. Anything wrong with that? I need to hear a voice.
You are,
Soul.
you have a soul. Well, a soul is an incarnated spirit. I think it looks okay.
And it really gets real simple. If you're reading this, you're living. Didn't we just study that these are the components? Even though there's this little bit of semantics about spirit and soul being interchangeable, these are true statements. If you go to the internet and type in soul and go to the images tab, you're going to see all kinds of inaccurate elements. So, nice question. Can the same spirit inhabit more than one body at the same time? Absolutely not. The spirit is linked to one and only one body. Indivisible, cannot animate two different beings at the same time. And what about the opinion of those who regard the soul as being the principle of material life? Now look at this answer. It doesn't concern us. It's just semantics. It's a matter of words. Let's try figuring out how to communicate effectively with whatever words we choose. They won't even answer the question. Isn't that interesting? All right, so here are Kardec's additional thoughts on them not answering the question, or the one that they did answer. To try to get some depth and more understanding of what's going on. By studying Spiritism, we know that during sleep, the spirit partially recovers its freedom. It isolates itself from the body, and it is in this temporary state that we have the opportunity to not only watch it, one spirit watching another, but the spirit of both the living and the dead always retain its semi-material envelope to facilitate this. Well, wait a minute. What does that mean? Retains its semi-material envelope. Hold that thought. Here are some more images that appear on the internet. I do believe these are 100% accurate as well. This timelessness, ageless, and eternal. Remember the time diagram I put up early? This is exactly what it's talking about. We are the culmination today of however many incarnations that results in the soul that is in us right at this very moment. And this soul, this spirit that is ours alone, will continue eternally until we reach perfection, if we ever do. Question 139, certain spirits and certain philosophers before them have defined the soul as being anemic, meaning animalistic, or the essence of movement and life. The animic spark that has emanated from the great whole. And we're going to define the great whole. This is the creator. This is God. This is the entity that is known as the source, the cause of all the effects. And we can get lost in all of this. But why is there this contradiction of difference of opinion, semantics? And the spirits answer, there is no contradiction. Everything depends on the meaning of the words. Why don't we just have words that mean one thing? It's human evolution has taken care of this confusion. So here's my thoughts. It's used to express very different things, this word, soul. There was a movie recently by Pixar, wonderful cartoon movie on the principles of the soul and the afterlife. Some call the soul the principle of life, and it is in this sense, it is correct to state figuratively, visionarily, that the soul is a spark that has come from God, the source. But the phrase, the great whole, refers to the universal source of the vital principle of which each being absorbs a portion. And we return that portion to God after death. In other words, we return it to the spirit world. This does not mean that the idea of a moral being who is distinct and independent of matter cannot preserve his own individuality. We know from Spiritist studies that a very advanced spirit, a very advanced soul, doesn't need matter. There is no body. They are totally ethereal as they move towards perfection. So there is this capability of not having to have the body, but the essence of the soul is still the same. It contains what God wants it to contain. So the human spirit, also called the soul, again, the soul is an incarnate spirit. So here's this interchangeability of the two words. And I can tell you, I'm still confused. I don't necessarily, in my mind, will say them in an interchangeable, they mean exactly the same thing manner, because I have a lifetime of thinking something completely different. And I still haven't quite grasped all this. In giving different definitions to the soul, the spirits have spoken according to their usages of the word. So I can handle that one. I can use the word soul and I can use the word spirit appropriately, but I don't, again, necessarily in my mind, equate them. And I'll bet most of you would probably say the same thing. So here's this spirit's perspective. Human language does not have one term for each idea. We have a very inefficient language. And I'm not sure Portuguese is any better. I'd have to hear from a native Portuguese speaker to tell me. There's a large number of misunderstandings, misinterpretations, lots of arguments on these two words and how they exist and why they exist and so on. So, just be aware. What about the theory that the soul is subdivided into as many parts as there are muscles, thereby presiding over each of the body's functions? So could it be that we actually have different souls? One for my liver, one for my feet, one for my heart. Well, how do we define what the word soul is? It might be correct if we're talking about the vital fluid, but it's incorrect if we're talking about an incarnate spirit. We can't possibly have multiple incarnate spirits within us. It's indivisible. The spirit is indivisible. It uses the vital fluid without dividing itself up. Now I'm getting a better understanding of why the soul, the vital fluid. But there are spirits who continue to mess this up. And the answer is ignorant spirits may take the effect for the cause. So, ignorant spirits, lower spirits, say it any way you want. They're just trying to make sense of it themselves. Kardec adds, the soul does act through the organ, animated by the vital fluid, and acts more abundantly in those organs that comprise the centers or hubs of movement. Interesting. The vital fluid is more directed to nerve centers, the brain, the heart, because those organs are critical to this living element of the body. Enables us to think, breathe, move forward, keep progressing. But this cannot be applied to the soul as the spirit that inhabits the body during life and leaves it at death. So that action of the soul only works while the body is alive. That action stops when the body dies. Is there anything correct in the opinion of those who think the soul is outside the body and surrounds it? Well, guess what? The soul is not fully enclosed in the body like a caged bird. It rather radiates and manifests itself outside of the body, like a light shining from a glass globe or a sound vibrating from the center of a cave. So in a certain sense, it can be said that it is outside the body. It is not restricted by the envelope of the body. However, the soul has two envelopes. The first is light and subtle, and it's called the perispirit. The other one is the body. So the soul is contained in both envelopes. The soul is the center of these two envelopes, as though the nut inside the shell that has grown from the tree. This is what that radiation might visually look like. This is the soul radiating. What about another theory? That holding a child's soul, continues to complete itself during each stage of life. Well, the spirit is only one as a whole in the child, identical to in the adult. As instruments of the soul's manifestation, only bodily organs develop and complete themselves. This is one more theory that takes the effect for the cause. Again, there's some semantics going on in here. People will misinterpret this answer, this question, this concept. But here's a wonderful graphic. This is from Burning Man in the middle of the Nevada desert. And the artist that drew this, he might have been spiritist, because what is he showing? The inner child of two adults who are having difficulties with each other and turn their back on each other. But the childlike quality doesn't have any of that adult-like behavior and thought. It is pure love. These are the children that are before 7 years old. So, here we are in our current 21st century incarnation. Women maturing, men maturing. Realize this has been going on for centuries? Remember the timeline? Now, the clothing is different. The ages are different. We didn't live to be 80, 90 like we do today. But you see what's going on here? Repetitive fashion. How many incarnations have we had? We don't need to know, but it's just a really interesting thing to think about, that billions of years reality and how slowly we have progressed. So why don't all spirits define the soul in the same way? Not all spirits are equally enlightened. Not all believe the same thing. They are all at different levels in their own progression. And there are spirits who are absolutely still limited, cannot comprehend abstract ideas, and they are like children under the age of 7 living among you. They need to be nurtured and educated and cared for. There are also pseudo-learned spirits who make a big show of words in order to assert themselves. And I can tell you, maybe done that a time or three, thinking I've truly understood what it is I'm speaking about and realize, oh my God, what am I doing here? So I now qualify, I think, and I believe. And I leave it open to all of you to express yourself and what you think and what you believe. Furthermore, enlightened spirits. So now we've gone from the limited spirits, the lower spirits, or pseudo-learned spirits, to now enlightened spirits. And they express themselves in different terms that have the same meaning. Now, I'm going to come back to that in just a second. And in your language, English in particular, it may not be fully capable of clarifying the true meaning of a specific term for us to be able to understand. So we'll make analogies and allegories and comparisons that allow us to absorb as best we can these principles. So consider that timeline. Consider Allan Kardec in 1850. So now we've had less than 200 years of an intelligent interpretation of the spirits and soul. And I say intelligent because prior to Kardec, it was all word of mouth. And now we have the codification and all that has followed since. And this amazing reality that the evolution of Earth through all these incarnations was simply not ready until the 1850s for it to begin to understand all that has proceeded for billions of years. Now, spirits communicate to their audience based on the audience's ability to hear, as I just said. And more importantly, the audience's ability to not only hear, but to learn, trial and error style, and eventually apply fully in an appropriate way, meaning they're not going to make the same mistakes they've made in the past, and they're going to influence others to do exactly the same thing for the good. Prior to that, we had all kinds of barriers to be able to grasp these principles. And then Kardec came to life, and the spirits directed him accordingly. And we're living that result right now, that cause and effect. 100 years later, after 1850, those same spirits and others began to communicate, now using words and terms and theories, especially those related to science, which humans are now better able to understand. Now it really begins to make sense about the 1940s, 50s. And here we are 175 years later, and they continue to communicate to us. And now we're even furthering that knowledge, that experience, and the ability to apply it for the good of humanity, to advance science, to change philosophy. And I want to talk about philosophy. So, what does it mean to be what is understood by the world soul? Now, notice this is not the word soul. This is the world soul. I at first I thought this was a typo in the book, but 3 editions all say the same phrase. And so I punched that into Google and I looked at the images, and these were 2 of the images and the references where there are multiple belief systems, religions, etc., that believe there is a world soul. It's the universal principle of life and intelligence from which we are born. And this expression is not commonly used, but when it is used, nobody understands what this means. So now we get into this word soul. And maybe based on these previous slides, you have a better understanding of what the world soul might mean. But remember, it's semantics. Everybody's going to interpret it according to your own creativity. At times, it's even been held that the earth itself has a soul. This has been written many times throughout history. But let's take the time to understand that the devoted spirits who direct our actions, our mentors, group and individual mentors, they're making sure we're moving in the right direction. As long as we listen to them, as long as we believe in them. And that means learning how to believe and learning to listen. And that's an interesting reality in and of itself. So here are my thoughts. The Latin phrase anima mundi is the world's soul. And according to several systems of thought, it is an intrinsic connection between all of us around the globe. We all look at the world in very much the same way, and we all think our soul is connected to our human body. Not everyone, but a huge majority. So now let's look at what the philosophers say. Plato, before Christ, wrote a document called Timaeus, and he presents an account of the formation of universe. Remember, this is before Christ, before our Bible. And he's now doing Genesis. He has his own documented element of the formation of the universe. And he proposes there's a product of rational, purposeful, beneficial agency. It is the handiwork of a divine craftsman. Wow. Who, imitating an unchanging and eternal model, imposes mathematical order on a pre-existence chaos to generate the order of the universe, the cosmos. Oh my gosh. Plato. The governing explanatory principle of the account is teleological. The universe as a whole, as well as its various parts, are arranged to produce a vast array of good effects. Gravity is a good example of this. For Plato, this arrangement is not only fortuitous, or is not fortuitous, but the outcome of the deliberate intent of intellect. In other words, he's saying this is not by chance. This is intelligence. This is intentional. The craftsman has a specific plan to construct our world as excellence. It doesn't happen overnight. We've already gone billions of years to get to this point where we're still killing each other in astronomical proportions. Why have so many ancient and modern philosophers discussed psychological science for so long without arriving at the truth? In other words, a comprehensive conclusion. Everybody thinks the same way. Why have we gone so long debating this? Well, these individuals were and are the precursors of what we now know as the Spiritist doctrine. And they prepared the way for the Spiritist doctrine. So again, think about what Plato wrote. You know, if that was like the New York Times, world, people in New York would start thinking different. But being human and therefore subject to error, Plato didn't get it 100% correct. Here's an interesting thing. These same errors that he made, not being 100% correct, they served to bring truth to light. In other words, humans became exposed to something beyond materiality, something beyond we're born, we died, that's it, there's nothing else. And so comparative study might yield that in the midst of error, there can be great truth. Thomas Edison failed almost 1,000 times before he got a successful light bulb. Every single one of those errors led to the successful light. More philosophers. Aristotle, he wrote that the purpose of life is the achievement of happiness, gained through continuous expansion of knowledge and the internal application of that knowledge. Well, darn, doesn't that kind of sound like Spiritism? As our spirit progresses, we should be happier, especially when we shed the physical constraint to the body. Socrates was put to death because he believed humanity should escape the cave and look upon the sun, which I interpret to mean live for the value of constantly learning in order to apply those changes for a better future. The ruling class believed that humans should follow that which is defined by the ruling class. Viewed as a revolutionary, he would not write anything down, trusting that others, including Plato, would document his thoughts if and when they were proven to be accurate. And that's exactly what happened. And they still put him to death. And then more modernly, we have Jean-Paul Sartre, who believed that humans have to decide what it means to be human through their actions and thereby give their lives purpose, meaning, significance. A lot of semantics. What does the soul have? Does the soul have a defined and circumscribed seat within the body? No. It resides more particularly in the head when you think of geniuses, like those philosophers, like Einstein. We tend to think about the soul as being very much there to facilitate Einstein's genius. And all those who think a lot, same type of thing. And all those who are benevolent to other humans. Mother Teresa, Nelson Mandela, Martin Luther King. Those are the well-known ones. Maybe the purpose of their souls is the heart because they dedicated their actions to humankind. So it's really interesting, kind of debate, different way of looking at things. if the soul has a specific purpose or not. So what should we think about the opinion of those who place the soul in some vital center? One could say that the spirit more specifically inhabits such a part of you or your organs that the sensations converge on that one point. But to place it in what may be considered as the center of vitality would be to confuse it with the vital fluid or the principle. And I thought about this a lot. I'm a musician. And you know who came to mind? Well, there were a number of people that came to mind, but I will tell you, the man I never got to see sing, the Italian opera singer, whose son now sings with him. Help me with the name. Oh, come on. Anyway, this man is a phenomenal voice, world recognized, one of the best opera singers ever. This man is deeply spiritual, deeply religious. And to confuse that his soul is therefore his voice, it's foolish. He has impacted the entire world. It's not
Is it
just
is it
Bocelli.
Bocelli?
Yes,
Yeah.
Bocelli. He and his family have done charitable things around the world, having nothing to do with his singing. And so, that's just one example. There are, many, many more. So one could say that the seat of the soul may be more particularly found in the organs that serve for manifesting the intellectual and moral qualities. And again, look at yourself. Look at yourself. If you've had physical ailments, internal physical ailments, your spirituality and your growth of your spirituality continues right alongside that physical reality of a body that is not at 100%. And what has happened in the meantime? You've become more educated, not only on spiritual principles, but on your own body. And now you have a very different way of looking at the value of life, or what Kardec constantly refers to as moral qualities. So I tried to summarize with some statements. You guys can look at these and correct me, please. Spirit equals the soul. The words and definitions are almost interchangeable. It's in the context of what is being said or written that determines which word will be appropriate for the audience and the moment. Humans have more than one incarnation. Each one is intended to be a progressive step from the previous one towards a higher purpose. And to facilitate that, we have the envelope called the perispirit, which connects the body to the soul and facilitates this progressive step in each subsequent incarnation. So that in each incarnation, every human has a plan, either to personally progress to a higher purpose or to assist others, meaning the whole earth, if necessary, if appropriate. Humans learn through trial and error, learning the principle of cause and effect. Do it wrong, you're going to feel pain. Do it right, no pain. And the perispirit carries forward all this knowledge and experiences from the prior incarnation, facilitating this progress. And hopefully you don't go through the same painful trial and error to learn again the principles of cause and effect. The vital principle, the essence of our Creator, the source, God, carries forward within the spirit soul in each incarnation. The vital principle is always there. God treats all humans equally. We all started at the same point. No matter how advanced or slower than you by comparison, an individual may be. We all started at the same place. We're all going through the progressive process. So we can get confused when experiences in education are individualized. Languages and words and phrases inconsistently, wrong interpretations, uh, prior belief systems, heavily slanted towards one interpretation of scripture. And now we get a different interpretation of scripture from Kardec and the spirits. And now the light bulbs start going on. And we progress individually and maybe even in groups like BSH, positively impacting, thank you, Regina, humanity across the earth, accelerating this progression. Thank you, Allan Kardec.
Thank you, Mark Carlos.
I want to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, so we can now open up for any questions or comments. And thank you, Mark, for being available. And I just want to add that, when you opened up, you talked about how, you didn't want to kind of rehash what we already know. But I feel like this basic stuff, we can't hear too much. And I wouldn't say it's really entirely basic either. There were some things you presented that I had to kind of ponder a little bit and think, that's not exactly how I understood it. But
That's where the semantics reality
Mhm.
comes into play,
Yeah,
And,
you
and
got it.
and I would just say, as I was putting each of these slides together, I kind of predicted this very moment right now. Okay, Sunshine's going to say something, Teresa's going to say something, just like that. But you're expressing exactly what I thought. Yeah, the
Mm.
semantics absolutely get in the way. We kind of interpret them, but just slightly different.
Mhm. Exactly. Yeah. So anyway, thank you. It was well researched and presented. Thank you so much. And it looks like Pepe has a comment or question.
Yes, I do have a comment. I don't know, while Mark was talking about 135, 140 something, a hand went like this in my screen. I want you to know that that wasn't me.
Oh,
I wasn't
really?
touching anything. And I had to go and take it out because it happened by itself. So
Oh,
somebody's fooling around with my computer.
no, no, no.
Uh,
This is a spirit that is present at BSH meetings. We
oh,
we have all experienced these types of unexplained things in one form or another.
and the other thing is, there is a movie called Lost in Translation. And I had some of the similar concerns that you had. And I was speaking to one of my friends who is longtime spiritist, and he's Italian. And he said, "Well, that means something. The original book has gnomes or little spirit that go around, fooling people. And let's go back to the original." And he pulled out the French. And you
Oh,
will be
very good.
surprised. The original French has so many different things from every single language. So that is one point. The other point is, this is 100 and some years ago. I am a civil engineer. I specialize in water and water resources, and I have another specialization in sanitary engineering. So the word fluid for me means something. It's about water, about air, about this and that. So when we talk about a vital fluid, I picture one of those. So that's a concern. I have my idea of what that is. And the other concept I have very difficult to understand is semi-material. The perispirit is form of a semi-material. Well, it's like you have pregnant or you are pregnant. You cannot be half pregnant. You are pregnant or you are not.
No semi-pregnant,
You
yes.
are material or you are not. You are immaterial. The semi-material concept, I think, was probably a product of the 1800s when there was no knowledge of many other things. But right now we know that matter, the material, is actually energy. Everything is energy. One energy that vibrational wise is vibrates less, is more dense. And maybe that when we say have um, semi-material, we meaning, well, it's a mix of solid and energy. So in that sense, when we say the soul doesn't live in, it works around, it's because it's exactly that. A series of vibration energy-wise that happen. The theory of strings calls for everything. If you go into the quantum and remove it and open it, you're gonna find nothing, something vibrating there. So supposedly everything is the result of vibration. But again, this is one of the things that we have to understand as a back to the language. I was told earlier by some of the spiritist group I used to contact is that you should not interpret this. It's the way it's written, the way it was said by the spirit. But many times I have been in real practice contradicted somehow. That well, you have to interpret it because this is 800 and some years ago. So that doesn't change what I think. I think it's a problem of language, it's a problem of translation, and I do understand the concept. That's my my main concern or my point today. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, I just want to share something. A few years back, Fred Govea on his podcast Spirit Reflections interviewed a man, lifetime spiritist, who decided that for the rest of his life, he was going to dedicate himself to beginning with the original French manuscripts and translate from that source into as many languages as possible. And he began in the Orient. And I believe he had been doing this for 2 years, and he now had 2 versions of the codification, all 5 volumes, done in 2 languages. And I don't remember which ones they are, but I know that he caught a lot of attention in the world of Spiritism, and people jumped on the bandwagon saying, I want this in German, I want this in Spanish, and so on and so on, because he went back to that source. And one of the cool things he talked about, and I don't know if the documentation actually calls this out in each of his new books, but he talked about on that broadcast, he actually has identified the differences in the Portuguese version and the English versions through multiple editions as they've continually modified and changed wording and so on. He's identified the differences from the original French manuscript, which I think is fascinating that he would get that specific. But again, the same word here in America means something different in the Orient than it does in Brazil and than it does in France and so on. So it just makes sense to go back to the source.
Okay, it looks like Kiki has a comment or
Yeah.
question. And this will be our
I'll
last
be-
one, and we'll move on. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I would say. I know that we are out of time. I just wanted to reinforce 2 things. One is I think that we are absolutely right that we have to be careful with the interpretations that we do because it was written long time ago, and there are differences in the way that we interpret the things according to the words. However, one thing that should never change is the intention behind the thought. And I think that this is the piece that everybody should reflect upon, because I think that when we read the questions from the Spirit's book, the most important thing for us into this lifetime is to understand what that means for us. And right now, I mean, being very, transparent and maybe even really straight to the point, it wouldn't matter for us if we call soul or spirit, if we do the good, if we keep progressing. You know what I'm saying? So I think that some things are completely open for discussion, and we could stay forever discussing what did they want to mean with that specific thing. But I think that the most important thing is, how can we reflect to the point that how can this make me better? And this is something that I always try to apply whenever I'm reading the Spirit's book, because there are so many things and all of them are super interesting. But if there's something that I didn't get much, but that could open for discussion, and it's not a discussion that will help me to be a better person, I move on because I'm not ready for that. And because I think that the discussion shouldn't be about this mean this or that. unless this is going to make us better. So this is one thing. And then the other thing, Pepe, that I wanted to contribute with your thoughts around perispirit. I don't think it is as simple as is pregnant, is not pregnant. Being pregnant, as beautiful as it is a completely material experience, right? It is 100% experience. There is a portal. I think that is a portal from the spiritual world that brings another spirit, but it is material. You are materially pregnant. And then the perispirit in itself, it's something that is semi-material because it has to do with the world where the spirit's going to be incarnated. So that's why it is semi-material. First, because all the knowledge that we acquire in one lifetime will be carried to another lifetime through the perispirit. And the perispirit will bring that to your incarnation based on whatever world you are. So the perispirit that we use gives us this shape and form for our body because we are on planet Earth. But if we were in another world, the perispirit will have to have a shape and a form to that other world, which means that that's the reason why some spirits that are not so evolved cannot visit another world, because the perispirit does not suit that specific world. And another great example that we had is Jesus Christ, that whenever he had to descend to planet Earth, the perispirit needed to be very, very, very worked around, I would say, to enable the spirit to shape to planet Earth human's body. Otherwise, it is as if there is a lot of energy in a light bulb, the light bulb explodes. So you have to have a bulb that suits to that level of energy. So the perispirit is kind of the same. So it is difficult for us to kind of understand this same material, and I imagine how hard that is for you, who is, who has a scientific mind and understand what that means in another level that I don't. But I just wanted to contribute with what I have studied on perispirit, and and we do have more things to say, but we can bring in another discussion.
Okay, so I'm sorry, we're really out of time. We're way over. So we still need to do our second part. So I encourage you to be in touch. If, WhatsApp, if you want to share your thoughts. So thank you again, Mark, and thank you everyone for sharing. I want to invite everyone to come back next week when we have Yuri Castro speaking to us on speech and silence. And so we're going to take just a 2-minute break here to grab your water, take a bio break, but just 2 minutes, and we're going to go into our second part with the hands-on healing passes. Okay, and bring your names of anybody you would like to receive the healing energies. All right, so see you back in 2 minutes.